Hi again YouTube, I'm Paul Douglas, and this is another episode of Vingt Cinq, my series chronicling the 25th anniversary year of Disneyland Paris. This episode is a little different though, because technically the thing I'm talking about today came to an end right when the 25th anniversary season officially began. But most of its components have been extended well into the 25th anniversary season, and even the bits that weren't just barely overlapped. But yes, technically Season of the Force actually ended right before the 25th, and isn't part of it. So why am I talking about it? Primarily because I timed my first visit to the parks on my annual pass to see it. Vingt Cinq revolves around my personal journey with Disneyland Paris over this era, just as much as the official celebrations. As a reminder, I was born pretty much exactly 6 months before Euro Disneyland, as it was in 1992, opened. The resort and I grew up together. So, Season of the Force. The first Seasons of the Force were staged in the US parks back in late 2015. Over there, the seasonal event included the Hyperspace Mountain overlay for Space Mountain in California, the walkthrough attraction Star Wars Launch Bay, which is an exhibit of props, costumes, that sort of thing, an updated story for Jedi Training Academy, Path of the Jedi, which is it's like an abridged retelling of the Star Wars saga prior to The Force Awakens into a 10-minute supercut type thing. There were decorations in the Tomorrowland area of Disneyland, and just, as far as I'm aware of, throughout most of Hollywood Studios. Not all of it, obviously. Some places it would have looked silly. Character appearances, Star Wars themed dining experiences, things like that. Hollywood Studios in Florida doesn't have Hyperspace Mountain, obviously, because there's no Space Mountain there. So instead of that, I think they had a couple of shows, one in the daytime and one of them was a nighttime spectacular in the grand Disney tradition. So those events took place at Disneyland and Disney Hollywood Studios, as I mentioned, because they're the home of their respective resort Star Tours attractions, so they're those resorts' homes of Star Wars for all intents and purposes. So, you know, that makes sense. Paris, though, was left out from that first run, as I think were all of the non-US parts first. I think Tokyo cloned it a few months later. I believe Hong Kong had a Season of the Force over the following summer. But Paris finally joined in at the beginning of 2017. So in January, just over a year later, the first Season of the Force in Paris began. Paris did things a little bit differently. For one thing, the main location was different. So in Paris, Season of the Force was in the park that doesn't have Star Wars attraction, Walt Disney Studios. And there's a main reason for that, probably being Star Tours was officially closed for the duration, ahead of its reopening as the updated L'Aventure Continue version, which I'll be covering in the next video. Also different was the focus of the offerings. Space Mountain's in the other park, so it was left out entirely. Launch Bay didn't make the move, there's no clone of that, there's a walkthrough, which would have been a nice way to repurpose Armageddon, but you know, whatever. Nor even did Path of the Jedi. Probably should have best, because I don't know where you'd actually show it in Walt Disney Studios, but it might be nice to have. Paris' version was instead built around a new version of those two shows from Hollywood Studios. So, Galaxy Far Far Away and A Galactic Celebration. Galaxy Far Far Away was a daytime show, and Galactic Celebration was the nighttime spectacular. Additionally, on offer was a sort of extended pre-show stroke mini parade intro for Galaxy Far Far Away, which was called First Order March, or is called First Order March, I should say. And also there were some Street from Sphere stormtroopers interacting with guests. And that was pretty much it in Paris. The Paris version leaned pretty heavily on these kind of experiences rather than on the attractions that were in many ways the main focus of the US versions. But also missing was what, for me, was one of the cleverer draws of the US version, themed dining. Almost missing. In Anaheim, thanks to aspects of the event outlasting it, I was able to enjoy the Star Wars themed breakfast in Tomorrowland. Bantha Blue Milk French Toast. It's silly, yeah, but I enjoyed that the Bantha Blue Milk aspect was inspired by something in the movies, and the menu had a lot of other themed options too. In Paris, you could get the Darth Vader burger and a Yoda cupcake. So I did. And yeah, it was fine. The burger was maybe slightly spicier than I would normally have a burger, but it was decent enough, and that bun was impressively black. Like, space black. Really, really black. Other than the colour though, pretty much just a normal bun. The Yoda cupcake was, well, it's a cupcake and there's green icing. It was okay. It wasn't nearly as memorable a meal as my French toast, but hey, at least it was something. Paris is severely lacking in themed and iconic foods and drinks in general, so, you know, it was better than nothing, which is what we normally get. At least we haven't yet had to suffer the indignity of America getting actual Bantha blue milk and us being shut out. But that day is coming. Watch them. Watch those seconds tick down until Star Wars Land opens and Paris' ghetto Star Wars Land over in Discovery Land becomes a real source of depression and jealousy. But I digress. The main focus of the first running of the event was those shows. So, how were they? Well, before we counter them, let's talk Stormtroopers, because they're the focus of the first show. Definitely one of the highlights of the event was actually the Streetmosphere Stormtroopers. You can see them here running around the studios one evening, causing all sorts of mischief. And this was great. Everyone was enjoying interacting with them and following them around as they harassed the guests and went to try and stick up the coffee stand. This was the first chance to get up close and personal with them for a lot of people. But they only have in packs of 2, so you don't have to worry about getting overwhelmed because there's always guests outnumbering them. But if you like your Stormtroopers in massive shows of force, rather than, you know, oh, there's just 2 of them, we can outrun them. What if there's a huge body of them moving into a massive block? First Order March is for you. So this show is essentially in 2 parts. The one part is a parade, which you can see here, of Stormtroopers basically marching through the park, led by the sinister Captain Phasma. Once they reach the stage set up for the event opposite the Cinemagique Theatre, they line up in front of it while Phasma and a couple of her more trusted officers take to the stage and run them through exercises. The most impressive part of this is when they discharge their blasters. So a clever use of fireworks allows for a neat effect of like blaster bolts really firing. Beyond that, it's mostly an excuse for them to have done the march, which was broadly speaking the more interesting aspect of it. It's, you know, it's nice to have a climax rather than for them just march in and then march all the way back out, or just to march through the whole parade route, which would have just gone on forever, I think. After they cleared off, it was time for a galaxy far, far away, as in literally right after. Now, someone told me they'd seen someone describe this show as basically like the Star Wars fashion show, and yeah, basically the entire show consists of a random assortment of characters coming out in turn to do a little either theatrical demonstration of something, or like, you know, a lightsaber or whatever, or just to deliver a few lines. I joked that nobody would manage to convince you this was a Disney theatrical production, and boy do I mean it. It was fine, and it recycled the neat blaster firework trick, which was still cool even repeated, but isn't exactly a vital show. And when I saw it, Darth Maul's lightsaber wasn't even lit, which is... It doesn't look great. That show is still running through September, I believe. But honestly, you can probably go ahead and leave after the first Order March unless you're desperate to see it. Luckily, the Streetmosphere Stormtroopers are also sticking around. The Stormtroopers are really taking up all the slack in this effort. They're definitely the MVPs of Season of the Force in Paris. Unfortunately, not still running is the far better Galactic Celebration. Galactic Celebration recycles most of the stage show elements from Galaxy Far, Far Away, but they're somewhat cooler just by being seen at night. And it also pairs them with a pretty jaw-dropping fireworks, lasers, and projection mapping nighttime spectacular. This was the show that justified the whole event. The Hollywood Tower Hotel building, home to the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror attraction, forms the backdrop for a trip through the Star Wars saga, bringing key moments and characters to life on a massive scale, and pairing them with thematically appropriate environmental effects, flames, fireworks, and so on. It was a fantastic nighttime spectacular. We're not talking about a rival to the exceptional World of Colour, or to Epcot's hauntingly beautiful illuminations, reflections of Earth, but for a celebration of one particular property, it was pulled off about as well as you could hope. As a Star Wars fan, it left me suitably impressed, which is really all you can hope for. The one thing I will say is this: it's very obvious the Place des Stars area in front of the Cinemagique Theatre was not designed to be used as staging area for a large show. The area has been cleared to allow more guests into it, but it's left a largely featureless expanse of vast open space in front of the stage. On the one hand, this means a lot of space for guests, but on the other hand, it means the actual logistics of organising an audience in that space is fairly tricky. Even on a relatively quiet day in terms of attendance, a vast team of cast members wielding lightsabers as their torches were needed to usher the audience into a properly formed crowd and guide us out the park at the end of the show. But it did give the kids in the audience who picked up lightsabers during the day plenty of willing sparring partners to try out their skills with, which, that was nice. Overall then, Season of the Force in Paris was fine. For a first run at the event, and given the constraints they had to work within, I think they pulled it off reasonably well. I think it's a shame Hyperspace Mountain and Star Tours La Intercontinue both missed out on any formal tie-in, but at least I was able to get in on the Star Tours sneak peek. More on that in my full review of the attraction next time. It's been confirmed that the event is returning next year, and I'm curious to see what changes are made. By the time it comes back, the sort of proto-Star Wars land conversion in the back half of Discoveryland will be complete. So you'll have Hyperspace Mountain, Jedi Training Academy, and Star Tours, and they're going to be joined by some kind of Star Wars movie attraction in the Discoveryland Theatre. It's entirely possible that that is just a French translation of Path of the Jedi, if indeed there's any actual dialogue in Path of the Jedi. I didn't actually see it, but that would be my guess of what it is. Finishing off the area as essentially a sort of proto-mini Star Wars land. With that being there, you have to wonder if it would even make sense to stage the event in studios again. Because if they do move it, I could see the Stormtroopers being the only element to make the jump. The shows would be hard to retrofit into Park Disneyland. You might be able to remaster Galaxy Far Far Away for the Jedi Training Academy stage indoors. You can maybe run First Order March down Main Street and then do the last bit on the castle stage. Maybe do Galaxy Far Far Away there as well. I can't see that being particularly popular. It's certainly kind of out of place to have the Stormtroopers in the Main Street environment or the hub environment. I can see that annoying people. So I don't know. They might not do that. They might do something else. But I certainly think it would be strange to do Season of the Force in studios again. And at the same time, they need to have additional things in it that aren't just part of the park normally. So they couldn't say, Hyperspace Mountain and Star Tours, these aren't parts of the Season of the Force, they're just parts of the park now. So they need to be doing something. So I don't know. One opportunity that is presented by moving it though is expanding those dining options. So Studios is lacking in e-series in general, particularly in counter service. The Studio One eatery isn't exactly reviewable in any meaningful sense, whereas Discoveryland has both the largest restaurant in the park, Cafe Hyperion, and the multiple remains of Pizza Planet are there too. Still seems to be standing, so either one of those could conceivably be repurposed into a dedicated Star Wars themed restaurant, complete with themed, or at least simply inspired by food. Which, that'd be a nice option. Time will tell. I'm sure we'll know more in a few months. October at the latest. But for now though, that's a wrap on Season of the Force, but not Star Wars at Disneyland Paris. Join me in the next Vingt Cinq for a look at Star Tours La Intercontinue. There might even be a chance to win a cool and highly collectible piece of memorabilia. That's right, the Star Tours La Intercontinue opening day pin, highly sought after limited edition. So remember to subscribe to me here on YouTube if you don't want to miss out. And while you're there, if you've enjoyed this look at Season of the Force at Disneyland Paris, consider hitting that like button and following at DLP Vingt Cinq on Twitter for more of my DLP 25 coverage. À très bientôt.